All right, here we go. This is going to be another look at using R to do some graphing, some creating of a graph here. We're going to try a pie chart this time, a pie graph. I've got some example. I got an example that I already want to try out here. So what we're going to do is what we're looking at here is Casey Mize, pitcher on the Detroit Tigers, of course. One thing I've noticed about him this season is that he's not quite getting strikeouts at a super high rate. His strikeout rate this season is lower than it was last year, and last year was already low. Last year his strikeout rate was 19.5%, and this year it's down to 16.5%. So that's not quite where it is, but I've noticed that his stuff is actually quite good. If you're familiar, there's some metrics out there that try to evaluate pitchers' stuff, quality of pitches, all that. And he actually ranks pretty favorably in the quality of stuff, and trying to magnify those metrics there. But he is an outlier though when it comes to whiff rate and strikeout rate specifically. I did some preliminary research here. We created a little scatter plot comparing Stuff Plus, which is the metric I'm using, to whiff rate. I guess I can just kind of show that to you. Mize would be the point in yellow here. So you can see he's kind of out there on his own. He's above average in terms of Stuff Plus, but he doesn't have a super high whiff rate as other pitchers. So that's a bit interesting. So we're gonna try to take a look and see what he's maybe doing wrong. And I have a theory here that I actually already know the result here, but my theory initially was that he was he could change up his pitch mix specifically with two strikes. So what we're looking at here is how he's as two strike when he's in two strike counts. What pitches is he going to? What pitches is he using more frequently than others in two strike counts? Because you would expect a pitcher. We still need to kind of figure out how he compares to other pitchers. That's the end goal at the end of this. But to start with, we can try to compare how Mize is to himself and see what pitches he uses in each particular two-strike count, or in two-strike counts in general. So the way that we're going to do this is we're going to try to use a pie chart here. And now this is going to be interesting because there's not really a way to do a pie chart here in ggplot. It's the way you do it as a bar graph first, and then you can turn it into a pie chart. I've never done a pie chart in R before, so this is going to be a first for me as well. Hopefully we can figure it out here. So it doesn't seem to be too complicated. I've already got some of the code on the side here, so maybe we can look it up. So what we're going to do is, first off, we got Mize's two strikes. All of his pitches here in two strike counts in 2021. I also have it in 2020. We might compare the two. We might not. But let's start first with just trying to do try and do 2021's data. So you can see here's all of his pitches. All of his pitch types count. So this is 1-2 count, 3-2 count. You just have to have it starting with. You can't have it start with a number. You also can't have it with the dash. So we had to just change that to X22. So that's what it is, X12, X32, all that. Dates and the mile per hour, not all that important. That is all kind of peripheral. We know that we're looking at Mize. We know that we're looking at, whatever. The velocities don't exactly matter. The dates don't exactly matter. But I kind of wanted it there for my own. So let's get in here, create a... So I think the first thing we have to do is create the bar graph. So we can create the bar graph first here, I guess. So let's do that. So let's do it. ggplot, and the data that we're using is going to be, was it Mize two strike? Yes, Mize two strike, I guess. The aesthetic X is just blank as I understand it here. It's just quotes, and the Y is going to be, I guess, that's interesting. So I don't have a value. I just have y equals I don't have values really, I just have pitch type here. And I want to graph it by pitch type. So we could just do by pitch type then, yeah? Let's try that out. See what happens there. Pitch type, and then the fill. Again, we're going to fill it by pitch type, I guess, right? So we'll see what that looks like, and then make it into a geom bar. And let me see. And we want to do it by the width. I guess we can just do it at 1. Why not? And stat equals. We want to do it by identity. Right. Okay. So do that. Just this is the first time I'm doing this, so it's a bit interesting here. I've never done this before, so never done this before. Let's see what happens. Okay, so this is kind of yeah, this is not exactly what I expected it to look like here, but we did kind of get it into a bar. At least we accomplished that. I'm just checking my numbers here. I don't recall the slider being so prominent in 2 strike counts. Yeah, as I recall, the 4-seamer should be the bigger one here. But I'm wondering if it's just a scaling issue. Because the way that it is that the 4-seamer is getting used a lot more in 2 strike counts. But it's not the way it's been drawn up here. Okay, so whatever. We can at least build the bar graph at least while we're doing this. And see what we got here. So turn it into a pie graph. What we need to do is change the starting points essentially. So coordinate, or the coordinates, polar. So that technically will most commonly used for pie charts, which are, you know, it's just essentially changing the way that we're starting with the y-axis. So y, or I guess with the y into start equals 0. So let's see what that does. It should turn it into a pie chart. So yes, it is. But again, it's still, did turn it into a pie graph here, but it's still not looking the way I thought it was going to look. Unless my numbers were initially wrong, it should be the count of sliders here. I have it in the other file. So he's thrown 197 pitches in 2 strike counts. I have 197, yeah. And I did a pivot table in Excel, and it turned it into 86 4-seamers. Right, so we can just do it like this. So 4-seamers, there should be 86 of those. Yeah, there is. So it's, the data is correct. The sliders, there should be 52 of them. So I'm not exactly sure why its slider is turning it into that, turning it like that. Why the slider looks like it's so much more, right? Because, I mean, I'm looking at this here. You know, slider, I mean, it's not exactly easy to look at it here, but the sliders, unless I messed up my numbers, I don't think I did. Let me find out real quick. Let's go. Okay, so yeah, I double checked all of my data. I'm definitely correct. I don't exactly know what's going on here, but I figured for the sake of the demonstration, we can at least figure things out here. We can do it a little bit differently. Create the data frame and then plot it again, essentially. So with the correct numbers. Just was checking my numbers. I wasn't exactly sure what the hell happened. But whatever, we can fix it. So we can do by pitch type. So we're just going to create a simple data frame here with the pitch type. So pitch type equals is going to equal alright, one sec. Let me create this off camera, I guess. It's not all that interesting. Alright, so have the data frame created. Well, I put the values in at least. So we have a vector here of all the pitch types. So fastballs, splitter, knuckle curve, or just simply curve, I think is how it's classified, but whatever. Sinker and slider, and then the values here. So create that data frame. And I just simply called it Mize 2 strikes. Let's just view it real quick just to make sure it looks good. 2 strike 2021. And there it is. So should be a lot simpler to plot now, and it should look correct as well. So let's do that same plot again. And just this time, hopefully it looks right. So data equals the Mize 2 strike 2021. I could just copy and paste it, but for the sake of learning, just type it up again here. X equals the blanks. The Y equals pitch type. Or actually, we want to plot it by value. We can plot it by value this time since we have the values. So yeah, I mean, that's what we're going to do. And then fill it by the pitch type. So it actually should look it should look better actually now doing it like that. And then just make it well, first of all, we'll do it as a geom bar to see what it looks like initially, and then we'll turn it into a pie. I like pie. Okay. Hold it together here. All right. I like pie. All right, let's go. So we'll do that, and there we go. So we see the bar, and there it is. So we see that we have it now actually correct, where the four-seamer is a lot more prominent than the slider. So we'll turn it into a bar now, or a pie, I should say. So polar Y started at 0. Now there probably is a way you can probably pretty this graph up a bit, yeah, there we go. So there we go. We can see that we have that there. So we could probably definitely make it look a little bit better as well. But that's kind of, I mean, it's just adding labels and whatnot. Put the data on the actual, like we can put, instead of having this key here, for instance, we can put the four-seamer label there, we can put the slider label there, we can put all of this other stuff, on the other ones as well. You can add some labels, all of that as well. But the one thing we can do is definitely remove some of the, remove at least all the labels here, like the scales. We don't need the scales on there either. So, one thing we can do is just put it into theme. I usually do theme test, but that, hang on. Parentheses there. I usually do theme test, but yeah, it still has the scales there. So I think we want theme void. Yeah, I think this is the one we want. This should get rid of everything and just do it like that. So yes, yeah, that's what it is. Okay, so very good, very good. So you can see that there. So we have the pitches there by color. We can also set the colors to do it the way that we want it. Like, so we can set four-seamer to be red. We can set slider to be, which is what color do they classify sliders as? Yellow. I believe that's how they do it in Savant, just to kind of classify things a little bit better. But I don't know if I necessarily want to do that right now. As we just kind of figured this out. So essentially, it is true. I mean, thankfully I had the numbers. Again, I still don't know what was wrong with the slider there, but that's okay. In the first way that we did it, but either way, we see that in 2 strike counts, Casey Mize is preferring the fastball, which seems a little bit interesting. What is the ramifications of that? It doesn't seem like most pitchers try to go with the four-seamer to strike hitters out. It's usually the more bendier stuff, like the slider or a curveball or a changeup if you have one, right? And it doesn't seem like Mize is getting a lot of whiffs or putting a lot of hitters away, finishing hitters off with the fastball, as it seems anyway. I don't know. I don't know what the issue is. I don't know if that's a conscious decision. Maybe he's not trying to go for whiffs. He's just trying to get them to hit the ball a little bit and put it in play and let the fielders make a play. I don't know, but that's not exactly. I don't think that's exactly the best type of strategy for him. I think he's, for whatever reason as well. As we've seen, the knuckle curve is, the splitter is third most here. I mean, the splitter, for whatever reason, this season hasn't been as good for Mize as it's been in the past. It's supposed to be his best pitch, but it hasn't been this year. But the slider has really taken a step forward, and I'm surprised that he's not using it as much in two-strike counts. Ideally, we would like to compare that to last year, and we can see what he did last year. And I guess we can kind of do that as well. I would just need to kind of create another data frame, do the same thing. I have the numbers pulled up, right? Let me see. No, I don't have that sheet pulled up right now, unfortunately. But the gist of it is I looked at it last year. Last year he did go with the I can't remember off the top of my head. Let's plot it just for the sake of completion here. Give me one sec. Okay, so I created that data frame for 2020. Let's just take a look at it really quick. As you can see, just so we can see the numbers and whatnot. So I had to call it, this is getting a little confusing, two strikes. The way I labeled them, I wasn't too forward thinking. But yes, you can see his results here. So, okay, so same thing pretty much. I'll just copy and paste. Should be pretty straightforward as it is. Just change this to the actual one that we're using, which is two strike 2020. And take a look. And you can see, what we should be able to see, it's a bit more even. He went with the splitter a lot more, and the splitter was a lot better last year, so that makes a lot more sense. But you can also see the slider, which was rebranded as the slider this year. It was considered the cutter last year. It's the same pitch, but they just reclassified it as a slider this year. Pretty much, it's a lot more even. But the fastball, you'll notice the fastball is a lot less of a focal point this year, in last year's. So that's interesting as well. Let me see. He didn't get. Similarly, it didn't look like he put many hitters away with the fastball last year, but definitely did more so with the cutter, slider, whatever you want to call it, slider. As I know, he put a lot more hitters away with the slider. That was his best out pitch last year. Was the slider. As it looks anyway. So it's been interesting that he's gotten away from that. He's going to the fastball a little bit more. But it's interesting. It is also interesting. Mize is a pitcher who has 5 pitches, which is pretty good. 3 of which are pretty good out pitches. The splitter should be a good out pitch. It's not for whatever reason this year. And the curveball has also been a pretty good out pitch as well. So he doesn't necessarily have to be a pitcher that goes, like, thinking of another example, some other examples of pitchers, they have that great secondary pitch, and that's usually what they're getting strike threes with, pitcher with a good curveball, but doesn't have a good changeup for whatever instance, doesn't go to the changeup for strike 3 very much. Mize has a good repertoire here of pitches. He has 5 pitches, 3 of which could realistically be used to get strikeouts. So he doesn't need to become predictable either. He wouldn't have to be so predictable. So that's another thing as well. So I am interested to see if Mize maybe changes this a little bit in the future, as we can go back to I'm sorry, damn it. I want to look at the 21 graph again. I do wonder if these will maybe shift around a little bit in the future. That's another thing to keep in mind as we look forward here. So, yeah, that's pretty much going to do it, I think. So we graphed some release points at one point earlier. Now we're doing some pitch counts by count, pitches by count at least. So ideally, I would do one of these for each count as well, but as we saw, for whatever reason, it wasn't all that accurate. For whatever reason, so don't know all about that, but you know, I have it broken out by count as well, but on my spreadsheet. So just for my own information at least. But this kind of, you get the gist of this at least. You know, it might be different on a 3-and-2 count. You might go to a fastball more realistically, but you know, anything less than a 3-2 count, you would think anyway, a pitcher would be going to a different pitch due to the more, you know, bendier pitches, at least in Mize's case, the more bendier pitches. But anyways, that should pretty much wrap it up. So yeah, laters.